Hello again, welcome to another episode of Northern Spotlights with me, Terry McStay. It's great to see you again. As you can see, we're back in the Catalyst in Newcastle, and there's a very special reason for that, because today we're looking at or talking about the workplace and the future of the workplace. All of us who work from somewhere, work from a place, and over the last 5 or 6 years, that place can be anywhere, but it's got to be a good one, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I've brought together a fantastic panel of experts, all of whom I've had the absolute pleasure of working with in the past in various guises, who are going to share some of their knowledge and expertise about that subject. So I'm delighted to welcome Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Catchlove. I work for a company called MillerKnoll, and my role is to share our insights, and MillerKnoll is in the workplace arena.
And also Paul.
Hi, Paul Glaister from Workpattern, here in good old Northeast.
And then Jacqui.
Hi, I'm Jacqui Martin, designer and workplace consultant based in Newcastle.
And Jacqui's particularly important because she and her team designed the interior of this building, and it is a fabulous building. We have an office here, and I love working from here, so we're going to come on to that in a bit and find out what makes it so special. But first, Mark, if I can turn to you. So tell us a bit about MillerKnoll, because people may know Herman Miller, which was the name you'd had for a long time, and now you're MillerKnoll. So tell us a bit about the company and what you do.
Yeah, so Herman Miller is over 100 years old, and Knoll is also a company that's not far off 100 years old. And Herman Miller acquired Knoll, and underneath those companies are a family of brands, all designing and manufacturing products for places where people live, where they get healed, where they learn, and where they work, which is where we're at today. And so MillerKnoll is the holding company.
Right.
And I'm part of the global research and planning team. And I love that actually the research part comes from Herman Miller, because our research department is 60 years old this year.
Really? Wow.
And that was headed up by a guy called Robert Probst. And anyone that knows about workplace will have heard of Robert Probst. And if you don't, do look it up. And the planning part is actually 80 years old this year. That came from Florence Knoll, the lady that started Knoll. And she was one of the first people that ever used space planning and design and talked to users on what their workplace should look like.
Talked to users?
Actually talked to users.
Revolutionary.
But that is 80 years ago. So, and we still look to some of their input and research from then. And what we do, I share research. So I have some very clever colleagues that do all the research, and they're digging for the gold. And once they found the gold, they give it to me to be able to share. And that's my role, is sharing what makes a great place to work, simply.
Because whilst the company designs and manufactures furniture, physical objects, that's not really what it's about, is it? It's about using those things to create a place that works for the people in it, I guess.
And that you made a key point. It is all about people. Yes, we have factories, we manufacture, but you're only going to manufacture and sell the products that people need and want. And so we always, all of our research starts with trying to understand the human psyche, the way, the ergonomics, all the way that people need to work. So yeah, it is all about people.
And you said the workplace that they want, but I guess sometimes they don't know what they want, do they? You have to kind of help them find that out?
Or people like Jacqui will do that, where they kind of explore and run workshops to try and find out how they work. And you're absolutely right. A lot of people know what they want, but they often don't know what they need. And those needs change quite regularly as well.
And I guess the last 5 or 6 years, so we're now in 2026, almost 6 years to the day since that thing that changed everything. I mean, that must have caused all sorts of issues, but uncovered lots of new things, I guess.
It did. I've been in the world of workplace for 40 years. I know I don't look...
It is hard to believe.
Yeah. And
you obviously started very young.
Yes. I've never seen so many changes as we've seen in the last 5 years. However, it has confused a lot of people. I think if one of the things that we are seeing is uncertainty and lack of making decisions. Well, the other thing that happened when the pandemic came is suddenly workplace became an issue. Facility management went up the agenda, which a lot of people didn't know that people have to manage buildings, and that went up the agenda. But what happened is people then could work from home and suddenly realize, hang on, this is okay for me in some situations. And so it threw a management problem because anyone who's in leadership often have been trained to manage by sight, not remotely. So that was one of the big challenges. But yeah, you cannot ignore the fact that those events of all those years ago, I can't believe it's you're saying it's 6 years ago, incredible, has changed so much. But there's still a lot more clarity needed.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, have things, obviously we didn't know that was going to happen in those changes and probably would never have predicted anything like that. But what things have been surprising to you in terms of how things have developed?
I think HR are now involved in workplace, the physical workplace, like they haven't been before.
Okay.
And we're seeing some large global organizations where the real estate team are reporting into the HR team.
Right.
Because the place is just there for one reason, usually to support the people. And that's definitely one of the big changes. All the research shows, the thing that surprised me is an increase in loneliness over the last 6 years. And I think that's a real challenge that companies are facing, whether that is because of remote working or just poor management. I think that's a challenge. That's definitely one of the things that has surprised me.
I think the thing for me is that it's given people choices and allowed people, not in every case, but in many cases, certainly in my situation, given them the opportunity to find what works best for them. And for some people, they love being in a bustling office. Other people really hate it because they can't concentrate. And it's given people those choices, isn't it? And so presumably you as an organisation are able to meet those or deliver to those different choices, even people who want to work from home?
Yes, and we've got the easy part because we're delivering the place. Our research showed that just over 80% of people want flexibility on where they work. But the bigger problem is not the place, it's the management. Because actually, over 90% of people want flexibility over their time.
Right.
Whereas that's a challenge that actually workplace design can't meet on its own. It can support, but it can't meet that. And so there are lots of ways to resolve that. And the easiest way is just not to give any flexibility at all. And that seems to be what some companies are doing.
Right. So going back to the way things were before.
Yep.
Right.
And it's their right to do so.
Yeah.
But there will be an impact on that as well.
Yeah. So in terms of the research, so you're continually, or your team is continually doing research into. So what sort of things are you looking at? Okay,
so it can be very deep ethnographic research, right through to good old-fashioned surveys, and they're still important. But one of the things that we're currently focusing on is something called relationship-based work.
Okay.
The idea that actually it's not always what you do or where you do it, it's who you work with. And does the office support that? Or in fact, does technology support that and make that work best? Whether that's working with people in other teams or other companies, whether that is working in your own team or even working alone. It's trying to understand what those relationships are and how do you support them. And space can actually support that or hinder it. And it's not static either. You might be working on one project for the next 6 months and those dynamics change. Right. So we're focusing on very much relationship-based work because we talked about this loneliness. There's this absolute inert need for every one of us to have a sense of belonging. Yeah. And that is starting to be lost in the world of.
Because I guess previously it was easy because we just brought everyone together into a big room or into whatever, and it was job done. I mean, it wasn't job done, but in the sense of bringing people together. Whereas now, it doesn't happen automatically, does it?
No, it has to. The word I keep seeing is intentional. You've got to make it happen. Great spaces where, and we were having a conversation earlier where you talked about bumping into people. That has to be designed in. It's, that has to be supported, and that's really important. A lot of companies, there's some great research around something called weak ties and strong ties.
Okay.
That actually a lot of knowledge in a company flows from the people that you don't know very well, because they assume you don't know. Whereas your strong ties, you both think you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And those weak ties are really important, and they will never get stronger if all you're ever doing is working virtually.
Yeah.
And so a place has got to support those relationships.
Yeah.
And it's also I will still need to work alone.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. In fact, about 15% of people said the main reason they come into the office is to focus.
Oh, really?
And that's been ignored, I think, because everyone talks about going to the office to collaborate, focus at home. Don't know about you, but that's not easy sometimes at home.
Yeah.
Whether that's for certain reasons, we've got butterfly minds or whatever, or we don't have a beautiful situation at home where we can easily work and don't have the technology. So actually, some people want to go in to focus, but not just focus the whole day.
Yeah.
And so that we're seeing a mixture of work settings to support that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you're talking about the weak ties, and I think people often talk about is these where you bump into someone or you're having a chat around the water cooler. That's the typical thing, isn't it? But those things you have to create the right environment for those things to happen, don't you? And I suppose it's even more difficult if people aren't in a physical space together. So how can you do that if people are, some people remote, some people in the office, some people a mixture? Is there something you can do to encourage those connections?
Now, a lot of people need autonomy, and people confuse autonomy for anarchy. But autonomy is still freedom within boundaries. So sometimes there is etiquette and guidelines that says, okay, we are all going to be in the office today so that we can be together. Yeah. And that's often, mandates often have a bit of freedom around them. So there are still boundaries. So you have to design work patterns, especially if you think about new joiners, whether they're the graduates joining or just someone who's just come from another company. We learn so much by observation and overhearing, constructive eavesdropping, I call it. Yeah. And you can't do that remotely. And so there is sometimes where you have to say, okay, every Thursday we are all going to be in, or whatever, whatever that may be. And there's a little bit of loose and freedom rather than, the kind of thing that everyone's saying is, oh yeah, you've got to be in 3 days a week. What does that actually mean and why? You've got to give someone a reason why they need to be in. Yeah,
yeah. It's funny. We had a staff kind of away day a couple of months ago, and for probably a month leading up to that, I was saying to people, "Oh, well, I'll see you then. We'll have a chat about it then." We were kind of really looking forward to just being able to have an easy conversation that didn't require teams, or you could just chat to people. And I think doing that regularly is really important, isn't it?
It is, and my colleagues in the research team identified just 2 types of work, and I bow to a guy called Neil Usher who's done some research around what he calls alpha and beta. Work is 2 things usually: talking about it and doing it. And often we that talking about it can be listening, it can be in big groups, and then someone has to do the work. Yeah. And it's not linear. You might then have to go back and talk about it and then go and do your part. And that also has to be supported at work. So I do need to be able to get on and do my lone piece, or you and me need to work together on a project, but then a few of us might need to get together as well, whether that's socially or actually to get some work done.
And because there's a huge amount of research that you've done. I remember reading or looking at some stuff you'd done a few years ago, and it just made perfect sense. Yes. There's all these different descriptions of how people work and collaborate and work together. And you look at it and you go, well, yeah, of course they do. But I guess it took someone to actually give those things a name and describe them so you can kind of recognize what they are. And that alpha beta thing is, I mean, that's what people do at work.
It is. Yeah, talk about it or do it.
Yeah.
My favorite one from that, though, is always what we call the warm-up, cool-down bit. Going back to your bit, that most introverts, their most valuable time in the meeting is not the meeting. It's the bit beforehand and afterwards.
Right.
That whole bit of where you kind of have a conversation, and I might say to if I'm an introvert, I hope they raise the issue about the budgets, which really means I hope you raise that issue about the budgets, and afterwards getting clarity. And that came about by some research that we did with a workplace psychologist called Dr. Nigel Oserland, where he kind of said that introverts value that time and space before a meeting, the warm up, and then the bit after the meeting, the cool down. So again, you've got to design spaces like that. Yeah. And people may not know we're exactly in a warm up and cool down space at this very moment for a very large meeting room beside us.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah. So this is where all the introverts would
chat,
talk about what they hope somebody else will bring up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've said the term work pattern earlier, which brings me on very nicely. Thanks for that, Mark. It wasn't rehearsed at all. Brings me on very nicely to Paul, who is from Workpattern. So tell us a bit about what Workpattern, because you work very closely with MillerKnoll, is that right?
Yes. So Workpattern, as a brand, we set up in 2010. My history doesn't go quite as far back as Mark. I think I'm 36 years in the industry.
Well, you're catching up. So.
I'm catching up. But all through my life in workspace, if you like, has always had some connection with Herman Miller as a provider of furniture to us. So we are one of their partners, their dealers. So we will use the products that these guys design to go into the spaces, largely people like Jacqui design. And when we set Workpattern, some interesting things were really going on at the time. I think that we were seeing changes in the industry. So we had an opportunity to take two steps back, if you like, and just say, right, well, where is the future of work for us now? And knowing Mark and his team and all of the insight that you were bringing to us, we decided, right, well, first and foremost, we saw that the Northeast, we always felt lagged behind the rest of the country in terms of quality spaces that we were used to seeing. So as well as bringing those great brands from the likes of Herman Miller and Knoll and others, we needed to bring that insight as well. So it was then working with, literally going around the designers, architects in the region, what's holding you back as well with your clients. So we set ourselves two tasks really. One was to bring the products that were shaping that new way of working that we were seeing. And secondly, and more importantly, I'd argue, was bringing that insight as well, that knowledge behind it to just enthuse people or encourage people into just thinking a little bit different about it. So that's how Workpattern started in 2010.
Because I guess a lot of your clients are sort of in the academic world or maybe in public sector, or is it very broad?
I mean, it's varied, and I think that the other interesting, because there's two parts of our business. There's a traditional side of the business which started in 1981, which is the Albany contract brand, and traditionally their clients have largely been public sector. We thought Workpattern, more design-led furniture, relying on slightly higher budgets sometimes. That we figured that it was going to be your blue chip companies or your tech savvy companies that where the future was going to be. The reality has been quite different, to be fair. I know, some of the best jobs that we've done have been with public sector as well. Where there's there's a strategy behind doing something in a project and a whole bigger reason behind it. And as Mark was pointing out earlier, when we, around about 2020, that conversation where we were trying to push that conversation up to the boardroom, along with Jacqui and other people, it started coming back down again.
So there's more receptivity.
It was the boardroom saying, well, actually, hang on, why have we got empty buildings now? Why is this not happening? Why are we not thinking about this? And we've been trying to tell you about it for the last 10 years. So yeah, there has been a lot of change, and I think we're only at the start of it now, aren't we?
Because I mean, was there a tendency for someone to say, right, I've got this big office, I need space for 50 people. Can you give me 50 desks and 50 chairs, and we'll just put them in rows? Or were people a bit more enlightened, or is it a kind of a...
I mean, it's historically like everything.
No names, obviously.
No. I mean, I don't think it matters who it is or which sector you're in. I think invariably these things are driven by budgets. They're driven by people perhaps being brought in as a team to do the project, which are not necessarily the most informed or with the right knowledge or think they're informed. And then the battle that the design community has working with those people to get the right brief out of them and then encourage them to take stock of what they've got, listen to the great advice that they're getting. And it just too often gets pushed down to the lowest common denominator on price. So again, everything we were doing was just trying to, little bit by little bit, just have the conversation and hope people could see the bigger picture there. Because at the end of the day, the cost of the building, the cost of the furniture, and the design advice that goes into that is peanuts by comparison to what people are paying in salaries.
Yeah.
And you multiply that out over the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it'll be, and that extra 1% is a heck of a difference, really.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I think I see it all the time.
But it's easy for me to say that.
Well,
so the other end of it.
But I see it all the time where people just think that designing something is really easy. And it can be really easy, but you don't get a really good result, do you? But doing it properly can make a massive difference. I mean, are there some things that where you've seen, maybe someone you've started to work with and they've taken on board what you've said and you've seen that it's made a difference?
I'd say, every time, hopefully, and some more so than others. And you often talk, as you used to tell us years ago, define what your purpose is, what's your purpose. And it took us years to actually work out what really is our purpose. And myself and our team would always say our purpose is about creating workspaces that empower people to do the best work. And that's really what we're doing. Yeah. It's about the people at the end of the day. And if we believe strongly in, that choice of furniture, the settings, the whole design coming together, but around the people, what do the people do, is far more important. Yeah. And we do get a lot of value and a lot of joy out of that, I'd say.
And then, so you've been doing quite a bit of research yourselves, haven't you, the last year or two? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Again, I can probably blame both Mark and Jacqui for that one. So we've been running, thanks to Mark and his team, some great seminars up here and webinars at various points. And there was always a little bit of a conversation going on in the background. Yeah, that's great that you've got this wonderful global insight. Come on, we're in the northeast. We're in Gateshead, we're Newcastle or Sunderland, wherever. Does that really apply to us, or in exactly the same way? And I think again, whilst we were experiencing this significant shift in the quality of spaces that we're all able to provide, it was still on a shoestring of a budget by comparison to certainly Manchester, London. It doesn't mean that we're not getting great workspaces, but there was a difference. Yeah. So I always, that was always at the back of my mind. And it was an event that we were doing where Mark was, actually you were, I'm trying to think, were you chairing that event? I can't remember which way it worked around now. There was another friend of all three of us as well, a guy called Ian Ellison, who was just founding a company called Audium. So his business was to take qualitative research, as much as you could throw at it, and using AI to get meaning and sense out of that. Okay. So it was quite quickly after then that we hang on. So where we get most value is actually when we're speaking to clients or when we're doing workshops. And we've done a couple of workshops together. And it's that dialogue that goes on, the things that are coming backwards and forwards, where you get real meaning out of it. Typical questionnaire of rate 1 to 5 or whatever it is, it gives you useful data, but it doesn't really get to the bottom of it all. So this is where I start thinking, well, is there a difference between Newcastle, Gateshead, Sunderland, Leeds, Manchester, London? So we started ourselves. I thought somebody must be doing this research anyway. Evidently they weren't. So we set about just trying to see if there was actually any nuance in the different regions.
Right.
And so we started that last February,
Okay.
and we've run just over a year now. We have actually had to put a bit of a stall on it because we were getting so much data. We had to start really looking at, well, what have we got here? I mean, it's telling us amazing things.
Yeah.
And interestingly, there are subtle differences in that nuance. But what we're finding is that we're all talking about the three key subjects wherever you are. They're just in slightly different orders, depending on the region you're in.
Right.
So it hasn't wholeheartedly proved that. There's just a little bit of a difference of priorities. But we've realised within it there's a lot of other gold as well.
Right.
I mean, from 2,326 or whatever it is surveys that have been done so far, we've got 160,000 words out of that, which I'm told is Harry Potter and the Blood Prince or whatever it is a novel. It's pretty significant, and 9,000 viewpoints. So there's a lot of data in there, and it's that we've started to gradually chip away at and say, well, what is it telling us? So in actual fact, it's now turning into a whole different business for us. A bit like, well, I know sometimes your research has done the same, Mark, where you've set off doing one thing, but you get so much gold out of it, actually gives you an idea to do something else. So we're now trialing that with a few clients as well, just to see where the benefit is as well for everybody on it. And
so what sort of things are you asking people in this? Do you want to get a glass of water?
I mean, strangely, a lot of it's actually centered around the work that we've done again with Herman Miller in the past. So it's questions that we'd ask normally in a workshop that would start to indicate to us what type of settings people have. Right. What work means, and that is the ultimate thing. What is work to you? Which to you and I could be very different. And it's just tell us about it. What makes it work, what doesn't, what gets in the way of it. And obviously we've been able to extend it out a bit. So where normally the information we really wanted is help us choose which furniture we need to put into this space, or working with Jacqui on a few other little things like that. So it's just getting to that nuance. But what we're getting out of this is a lot more. So we're starting to hear things about the culture. We're starting to learn things about the technology issues that people are having. So it's then just a chance to put it all together in one big melting pot. And that has been, I think, the enlightener for us. And again, and it's I've shared the initial report with Jacqui and Mark, just to say, well, what do you get out of this as well? Because they'll get something entirely different out of it than what we'll get. So it's fascinating times, and I think the timing's really right for it as well, because there's so much information out there at the moment. It's very easy to get lost in the weeds. The reality is, and I'm sure we'll probably end up talking about this as we have a bit more of a chat later on, some things haven't changed at all, and some things have changed a heck of a lot. Right. The one thing that hasn't changed is people. Yeah. And I know I've heard you say this before. I'm probably cleaning one of your lines, Mark, and that's the most unpredictable part of it. Yeah. So it is. Yeah. So
what are the things that have been most sort of surprising, or that you didn't expect that people are telling you?
I mean, if I'm being brutally honest, I think when we've narrowed in at some of the things that have been said, we're fortunate, I think, that we live and work in places where there is a great culture, and we're used to seeing that. So yeah, we're on the better end of all of that, shall we say, and working with clients largely that I would say have a much more open and generous culture towards work and people. But it's shocking, actually, the quality of not just environment. I think it's more than anything, it's management. The restrictions that people are under, the lack of purpose. That is by far the most talked about thing. Right. And then that's followed closely by, I would say, distractions in the workplace, poor environments, noise. And as we've dug into it a lot deeper, so we always thought that individuals as well would choose a totally different space, which is true. What I like might be different than what Jacqui likes, what Mark likes. It can change during the week and the day. But we are starting to see patterns in the type of job that you do as well. And again, getting back to what Mark was highlighting earlier about, companies that at the moment not quite sure what to do or trying to really struggle with that occupancy level in the office, or Tuesdays, Wednesdays or Thursdays are the busy day, Mondays and Fridays nobody wants to go in, of mandating is actually, whilst it solves an apparent need for them, it is creating a much bigger problem. And all we're finding is that we're validating exactly what Mark and the guys have been saying. But yeah, everybody's slightly different. The job role that you have and management, generally speaking, particularly if they're people managers, will anchor naturally to the office.
Yeah.
Whereas individual contributors or people, particularly that are working on specific projects, they need a lot of focus time. And the other big one that's really come out of it, and I think this is quite funny because everyone's talking about, or the second thing they're talking about, come in the office and collaborate. Most people are going to the office, as Mark said, not to collaborate. And particularly when you're citing that the reason they're not going to the office is because it's too distracting and noisy.
Yeah.
And in an actual fact, if you look at the collaboration side of work anyway, and when people collaborate, people need to do more focused work than they do collaborative work.
Right.
And so again, we tend to be designing and pushing the narrative around something that I think ranks 5 or 6, instead of something that ranks in the top 3. So again, the focus is just a little bit wrong.
Because you've been asking people not just about the place they work and do they like their desk. It's genuinely what do you enjoy and not enjoy about the whole environment.
It's completely
real
that
insights
experience.
Yeah.
It's the experience that they're having. And for us, again, it's the whole, being able to look at the qualitative side of the data is really to try and get the why in between the what we know. And that's the bit that's, I think, very intriguing for me, and the bit that we're just digging and pulling more and more on.
And you said this was partly because you suspected there was differences between, say, the Northeast businesses and the Northeast and other parts of the country. I mean, have you seen that there is that difference?
Not hugely yet.
Right.
So yeah, I say there are. As I say, it's just the order on that. I mean, there was a bit of an underlying, and I think we need to challenge the questions a little bit better, I think, as well, moving forward. That's another reason why we've put a slight pause now before we set it off and really go galloping with it. That the Northeast was, how would I put it? They were relatively satisfied as a whole, the Northeast, compared to the other regions. Again, if we looked at Manchester and London, were the two big ones that we've done more, or we've unearthed more data out of both London, Manchester, and the Northeast, so that we had a general comparison. Other regions, we've gone at it slightly lighter just to get a bigger, broader brush look at it as well. And generally speaking, in the Northeast, people were satisfied with their workplace, whereas we know that as a whole, the level of quality, I would say, in those workspaces, or certainly the spend, has been considerably less in the Northeast than it will be in the other two regions. Okay. It's strangely they're quite satisfied with it. The biggest thing that people are dissatisfied about is pay. Yeah. And that was the one thing that jumped above the other regions. Right. Didn't feel like they were getting fair compensation for what they were doing and putting into it.
Right. But at least they were quite happy to do it, which is
and again, and the one just the one that was consistent all the way through is the number one was just that lack of transparency and knowledge coming down from management.
Yeah.
So yeah, we keep thinking space is the most important, but it's in there.
It's important,
but it's about
So what are your plans? So this is probably unique research in terms of the UK, I would suggest. No one else. No one else is doing it. So what are your plans in terms of what you do with all of that? I mean, are you going to make it available to whoever might be interested?
Anybody and everybody, including competitors. Yeah, it is. I mean, we always said it would be that the report and the data that comes out of it would be completely open source. So there will be, we're just doing a final edit on the first report that we've got back. So that will be on the website soon. So you can download that.
We'll put a link to that somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please. And I mean, in terms of where it's going, it's no different to where we started, I think, in 2010, and just it's about bringing this knowledge. You just try and enthuse people to just think a little bit differently about it, and not just jump straight into the trying to do the solutions, trying to mandate things. Just take that opportunity to. Because the other thing that we're doing with this now is we are making it available through partners, through everybody really, that you can also, individual businesses can do that survey and benchmark and see where do we sit, what's the temperature like.
Okay.
And hopefully that will again just help get people to focus more. Is it legitimately the right word? Just focus a little bit more so on asking the right questions first, realizing what their people are really saying, instead of just jumping into this is how we're going to do it. And then design the space around that.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll all get the benefit of this at some point.
I hope so.
Yeah, that would be good. So I mentioned earlier that it's people think it's easy to design something, or at least to design something well, and that isn't the case. And it's not enough just to have amazing furniture and amazing environments. You've got to create them, and that's where you come in, Jacqui. You kind of, I guess you would. There's a building, and it's kind of empty, and you make it amazing. Is that a?
I thought you were going to say pretty there.
No, I wouldn't dream of saying something like that. No. But that's kind of broadly what you do. And we are in an amazing building at the minute that you had a big hand in creating.
And this building encapsulates a lot of what both of you have been saying. In terms of it was designed as a building for collaboration, and specific sector-based collaboration. Okay. And I think that's partly why it's successful as a site.
That was in the brief on day one. It's got to be
basically you had the National Innovation Centre for Ageing, the National Innovation Centre for Data. They were the two key tenants and clients, and they had they had a vision. It was more that case that they knew what they didn't want as opposed to what they did want. Yeah. So we were brought in, this was when it was Design North. It was when I worked with Design North then. We were brought in and we got to know what each of the different teams did. And that was what was great about it, was that those teams, as I said, they didn't know what they wanted, but they knew they wanted something different, and they were different to what I would say, basically, which was typical university academic accommodation. And they had zero input in what those workspaces were like. So it was weird because not only were we designing their workspaces within the walls of their offices, we were also designing the collaboration spaces. And I think we worked with the architect. Obviously, the concept for the building is quite clear. You've got this central zone of collaboration and then all the private spaces around that. Yeah. So people come out into those spaces. And what's so lovely is that everybody comes out into the collaboration space. You don't have to travel to them. Yeah. You've got more of that serendipitous chance meeting of people, but also because they've been really thoughtful about who else comes into this building. Yeah. Conversations kind of can happen a bit more naturally, a bit more enthusiastically. You're not, it's a bit different to having the accounts team having a chat with the HR team. It's literally about having all these companies co-working, essentially. And I think that's great testament to what I would say it was probably really good leadership, which we haven't really touched on yet, how important leadership is to that great workplace. Picking up on your point about the Northeast not being so critical of the workspace, because basically I don't think they ever get asked. And they never.
We'll make do.
Yeah, they've got a real make do and mend attitude, and more partly I think maybe I'm a bit, I'm guessing a bit, but maybe they're just really grateful to have a job, and I think that's a legacy thing. The Northeast, traditionally high unemployment, that kind of thing. I remember my mother working for an electrical distributor who I won't name, they're still going. But I remember going into her office once, and she still had the 600 by a meter paper-based workspace, and they'd just gone over into using computers. She just had the old sort of Rolodex thing, and the computer was on the windowsill. They never thought that, you know, that we've got new ways of working coming into this workspace, new technology. We might need to think about the workspace, but we never even thought to question it, you know. Yeah. And basically, she'd worked there for years, and I think that's the other thing, is that when people get exposed to how other people, they walk into other people's offices and go, "Oh my God, this is amazing! Yeah, this what the workplace can be like." Yeah. That kind of gets people excited and get to the point where actually, you know, we should start questioning this. Yeah. We deserve to have a space that's not just fit for purpose, but inspiring and attractive.
And as you said, empowering people to. And I can certainly attest to the collaborative kind of nature, if you like, of this building. So we've had an office here for about a year and a half. And I wasn't sure at first why, but as soon as I came in, I knew why. Because I just bumped into so many people. And every time I come, I bump into people, and it is largely because of the way the place is designed. As you say, there's just you kind of can't avoid meeting other people in a good way, because you know they're just always around, and there's lots of places to mingle, and it's great, and I do really enjoy working from here. But as you see, that didn't just happen by chance, did it? That was built in from the outset.
It was, and full testament to the architects. They had the vision of the central atrium, which brings the natural daylight. I don't know if people notice, it's actually two buildings in one. You've got the public space and you've got the private space. Yeah. So you've got this upside down. The floor gets bigger as you go up.
Oh, so it does.
Yeah. And that's partly due to the restrictions in terms of planning, in terms of what they could actually put on the site. And the architects just had a genius idea of that. Well, so we need X amount of space. Why not just make it bigger going upwards? And you still get the total amount of space. But the ground floor and the first floor is the public space, the public arenas, where you've got all the seminar spaces. You've got the TED Talk style theatre, as well as the workshop space, which is about flexible exhibition or testing, research, that kind of demonstration type space. I think they had a kitchen in the full working kitchen in there, which someone had designed, fully working as in plumbing and everything, because we made sure that all that was there, inbuilt in it, so you could set up whatever. That's partly to do with the Innovation Centre for Aging. They do a lot of work with people testing products for the aging population. So they wanted to create the type of spaces that people can use and rent, and so they can do their own research onto that. And that kind of brings you back to this building as well, because Voice North were involved. And so we had to do a lot of workshops with them where we were just running them past just aspects of the building, just this is what it's going to be like. Can you see any issues? Can you see? And it was quite a funny situation once, where we had all these different types of people with their own different types of ailments and their own types of different constraints. And at one point, it felt like there was it was like top trump of ailments. Well, I'm partially blind, and I feel like it needs to be like, well, actually, I've got a limp, and I feel it. And trying to balance all those needs was really difficult. And you know, and I think they accepted that. This is, well, we can't please everybody, but we can tell you why things have to be the way that they are. So it was really important that the building was designed to with the idea of aging, and that
which is happening to all of us. Let's face it.
Exactly. I'm aging. We're all. Yeah.
Well, you might not be, Mark, but the rest of us are.
But it's the so. But the only design guidelines for that kind of aging, whether it's dementia or physical aging, it was guidelines for care homes or for hospitals.
Okay.
There was nothing for the workplace, so we had to take some of those guidelines and apply it to this building. but obviously the key brief was it mustn't look like a hospital or a care home. And I think that's great. Really great, challenging brief. Never really thought about it much in the workplace. Apart from, yes, you've got to design an ergonomic workplace as a matter of course, and you've got your building regulations, which bring in things about accessibility, that kind of thing. But going to the extent of making sure the signage was sized and articulate enough for people with visual impairment. So that's why we've got the icons next to the text on all the signs, just sort of help people who might be a bit more impaired. So everything, even from the furniture in the cafe was tested. The furniture in the meeting rooms was all tested by the different, from staff to the voice, everybody. So they all had a bit of a say about certain elements. It wasn't designed by committee.
No, but you listened to a lot of
input. So, for instance, the chairs in the cafe, it's there's a mix of chairs. You might not have noticed that some are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower.
Really?
Some have got arms, some don't have arms. And that we chose a really, really good furniture company that had a range of furniture that could meet all those elements, that brief, basically. That's why you've got the comfy seats. We did the bum test, we'll call it.
Okay, important. But I think with a lot of things, when you design it for some people who have ailments or disabilities or things they're not very good at, you make it better for everyone, don't you?
Exactly.
Because if the signage is better, well, that's good for me as well because I can see it better. Or if the chairs are at different heights, then that's better for me and anyone because you've got that choice, haven't you? So for those of you who are watching who aren't based in Newcastle, or even if you are and you've never been at the Catalyst, so it's on the Helix site, used to be the Scottish and Newcastle breweries. You said there's a public area downstairs, there's a really good cafe. So if you're in Newcastle and you want to see some of this stuff and sit on these chairs and see the amazing stuff, then do come along to the Catalyst. I'm sure they'd love to welcome you. I work here quite a bit, but I'm sure there's things I didn't know the thing about the chairs being different heights, so there's one thing. Is there something that people might not have noticed or you'd like them to look out for when they're in here?
Well, I love things with a bit of a sense of humour, a little bit of make people giggle. And it's part of making a workplace nice, isn't it?
And why not?
Keep an eye out on the skirting boards for the odd little sticker and around the sockets.
The skirt, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
I'm not telling you where they are.
So it's a bit of a treasure hunt, is it?
It's a little bit of a treasure hunt, and there's again from the interior design point of view. Yes, we did the floor finishes, the wall finishes, contributed to the lighting design and everything, the bespoke joinery, furniture selection. It was great to get right down into the detail of the signage, the wayfinding, the actual branding of the space. So all the graphics that you see on the walls, around the lifts, to get into that much detail, it's quite unusual. It was unusual for me at the time. So to do all the those little things, and even the graphics on the staircase. I don't know if you've noticed, trying to encourage people to walk up the stairs.
I have noticed those, yeah.
Yeah. So if you walk up.
Is it about how many calories you burn when you walk up the stairs?
But also, if you walk up and down it 5 times, you've reached the height of Ben Nevis or something like that. It's trying to encourage people to use the staircases and things like that. But there's also little snippets of health information that relate to people, women, menopause, that kind of thing. It's just trying to sort of get the idea of aging out in the discussions and health and aging well, essentially. And that's what I think the building does. And I think the Centre for Data and Aging just came together beautifully to sort of push that agenda of this building being a truly collaborative space. And I think it was the problem. It finished in 2019. Right, just before.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
right.
COVID hit. Right. So it took a while for everyone to sort of see and get the see how well it worked.
Benefit, yeah.
So there was a bit of a bit of a weird period of stillness.
Yeah.
But now when you come in, when it's 100% occupied,
I
or
wouldn't
near
be
enough,
surprised. Yeah.
it's got such an amazing energy and buzz now. Especially when there's an event downstairs.
Yeah.
It's really, really lovely building to walk into and get involved in it.
Well, certainly for me, as someone who spends time here, I'm really glad you were involved in making it what it is. And I guess for the two, as you said, the two core tenants, they've done the rest of us a favour, really, by having that focus.
Absolutely. And it's managed well as well. One of the other things that we talked about earlier about HR is HR looking after space and that connection, and how do you manage people meeting. And I think the role of a host as well is starting to become more seen within the workplace. People who are managing those cultural events across not just the smaller teams, but also across organisations. I think when people become a manager, you think, oh, let's have a team meeting every week and let's circulate an email and that's it, I've done my job kind of thing, keeping everybody up in the loop. It's got to evolve into something much more to manage that transition between working at home, working in the office, working away from the office. It's vendor management or people management. It's a complex thing, and there's a couple of, I think Catalyst does it well. Strawberry, One Strawberry Lane or One Strawberry Place, I can't remember. Yeah, they do it really well. They've got, and I think it's the building that I've got that focus on amenity and social space that everyone can interact with, but also it's also public. It's got that interaction. People can. It's not closed off. This building and that building are doing it really well, and hence they've got high occupancy rates.
You feel welcome and you're drawn into it, aren't you?
Yeah, loads of people I know, especially reps, they use that building as a space to have their meetings because it's a semi-professional cafe. It's weird. It's not like you've got Starbucks or Costa. Anybody can go in there. You've got crying babies and whatnot, interrupting the meeting. It feels like that professional third space. Which, I've been a fan of third spaces since I started.
Well, should we take a little break? Having heard from each of you, and we'll come back and talk about third spaces and maybe some of the things that you would like to share to the viewers about what they can do and make sure their people are empowered, or as empowered as they can be. Welcome back. We've had a nice cup of tea and a biscuit. So we've heard from our three expert panel members, three guests, about what they do. So this is where you can share some of your knowledge, expertise with those who are watching. Because as I said at the beginning, we all work from somewhere. Some of us are lucky enough to work from somewhere that's really good, but not everyone is. So, what do you think's the most, say you were starting from scratch, so you're working with a client or a company, they're starting from scratch, they've got a blank sheet of paper. What's the thing that they should prioritize that they maybe wouldn't typically?
Yeah, so I think it is actually listening to what people think. And I think that is often a challenge where they're so focused on the building, on the budget, the time scale, but I can guarantee the most unpredictable part of everything that they're going to be doing is
people.
The people. So I think that is, how do you have in place to run those workshops? And that's why you need skillful people like Jacqui to be able to run those. And I think the key...
And that's workshops with the people who are going to be...
And if you've got 500 people, it's not easy to get 500 views. However, you should have representatives from each department at each level. Leaders make too many assumptions about what they think their staff do. They don't really know. So that's why those workshops. And we have a saying, stop designing for people, start designing with people.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely key, and a skillful conversations and get that out of how people need to work and what they want to do as well.
And how often does that actually happen? Would you say?
Not often enough. I think that is the reality. And going back to what Jacqui said earlier, was this whole idea of, a lot of companies just give people workplace. That's often based on one or two or three people's decision that they're thinking. And it doesn't, I have to tell you, it's happening a lot more than it used to. But people like us, we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
Our bubble is about great workplaces. I made a statement before, and I will stick by it. Most workplaces in the country are bad. And that's kind of scary. That's the reality of it, because a place like this beautiful building is the exception rather than the rule.
And that's not good for anyone, is it? It's not good for the employees. It's not good for whoever heads the company. It's And really what you've described isn't rocket science, is it? Talk to people, find out what they want, but it doesn't happen as much as it should.
And sometimes the reason is people fear what they're going to find out. I think that's...
Yeah, because I've done both. Obviously, you speak to whoever's controlling the budget, making the decisions. Do you want your staff involved? If they say no, yes, I can design a workplace because I've seen enough of them and I can ask the right questions about need and all that kind of stuff. But if they're not prepared to open that door, and you're right, sometimes they don't want to because it's a proper kind of worm sometimes. I've done this exercise a number of times with different organisations, different sizes, different sectors, and in that workshop scenario, asking people to imagine the day one of their new workplace. What's it like when they walk through those doors? And sometimes I push them back to literally while they're getting out of bed. What's their journey like? Because if you've spent an hour in traffic, the last, and you walk through those doors and you walk straight into lots of people bombarding you with questions, that kind of thing, or a busy workplace, you just want to maybe find someone to decompress. But the other thing is, what you'll soon find out, people map those days. They're all different. And I think one of the things that people don't get is that one size does not fit all. And I think that's the biggest mistake most people make when it comes to designing workplaces. They think everyone's just going to need a desk, a chair, access to a meeting, and half decent coffee, and that's enough. That's what that'll do. But I think that is a really useful exercise, and I think if people never really think of their workplace in that context of how it all mashes in together. It's a really interesting exercise, and it just raises more questions than answers.
Yeah, I'm sure. And as you said, Mark, you've got to be prepared for what comes out of that, haven't you? Because there's no point in asking those things and then doing nothing with it, because that's even worse, I suppose, isn't it?
I always say there's nothing worse than a suggestion box that's never been opened.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trouble. If you're not going to do anything with what you hear, then don't do it at all. Otherwise, you are going to create disappointment. And I think that is important. Prepared for the worst, but it's going to be worth it in the end.
Yeah. And I guess for you, Paul, so you must come across that. You must be in that situation a lot, where someone says, "Right, here's a big space, fill it with stuff."
Yeah.
What do you think about first?
I mean, no, not necessarily. I think. I mean, the first thing is, yes, you can look at the generic basic plan, and you're right. As Jacqui said, all we need is a desk, a chair, and a filing cabinet is probably what it used to be years ago. And I think again, it's putting all of that together, and particularly again where Jacqui's expertise is every company is different, and it should be. They've started business for a particular reason. They have a purpose. They are out to do something, and then around that they'll have a vision on what they need their people to be doing to make that business successful. That's all great. That's all there, but then it's right. Okay, so how do we get those people working the best way they can to deliver to that end goal? And that's the reason for opening up that conversation and going out to all 500 people and finding out what they think, what they feel, and making sure that it's in tune, because they don't. Again, and I've often heard you say this, that how many companies are prepared to have that mirror held up against them if they don't like what they see necessarily? It's, that's not being done for a bad reason. It's actually being doing to help them.
And can I speak up for Audium, the tool that Workpattern are using? I think historically lots of surveys tell us what, but not why.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of this is to find out, why do you think, well, it's not what you think, but why do you think that way? And often that isn't a 1 to 5 rating. That is words and trying to uncover what that might be. You might find that a meeting room is not used very much, but why? What's the reason? Or one meeting room is used a lot, why? I think that's the challenge of these workshops. It's not just the what, it's the why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can often blame the setting or something around it, and it could be something to do with the heat, the sun shining, and whatever. There's millions of different reasons.
It almost seems like you need someone who isn't part of the management, but who can look at those things. And you said there's HR getting involved in things like that now. I mean, is there a bigger role for not necessarily the HR department, but somebody who actually looks after making sure the workplace is good and as good as it can be?
I think definitely aligned with business needs, priorities, and I think that's going to, more so, I think, in the coming year and 3 years particularly. I mean, I was going to say that you do have, yes, you've got people managers, you've got people that, I think that role has actually been getting created quite a lot over again, is this is our ideal bubble world. Yeah. But the other thing I would just point out there is that, and again, I think this happens more so here, that it might be every 10 years or 15 years that people will actually look at a workspace and do something. And then let's get some volunteers together. So all of the people that stick their hands up and want to do something exciting will want to do the office. But they're not just doing it for them, they're doing it for everybody. And again, it's something I've probably heard Mark say numerous times. Extroverts tend to be the people that will be the ones that stick their hands up and want to do that, and create an office which 40% of the people can't stand.
Can't work
because it doesn't fit their character.
And sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I've totally lost the plot there. Sorry, I've lost my thread.
Mark.
What we're seeing in the world of facility management is traditionally facility managers manage the building, but actually they are now connecting with HR to become workplace experience managers. So this whole idea that it's not just it's how people feel. And often we had a saying that we feel before we think. And facilities, in fact, I think you're quite interested in how a building impacts people. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me is really important. The retail industry have understood this for ages. Go to IKEA, try buy one thing. You can't. They've got it. And space has an impact on us. It's called cognitive ergonomics. And space affects us. And that whole idea, we talked earlier about hospitality. Hospitality is how welcome you feel. It's more than just food and drink. So a smile at the front desk when I come in makes a huge difference, that whole value. And it's that whole experience, that workplace experience, makes a huge difference. I wish I could say furniture was the answer, but it's just a part of the answer. Space communicates a message. The religious world knows this, the commercial world knows this, the workplace world has to say, what does this workplace communicate to my staff that are coming in? Does it say we love you, care for you, or bye? Exactly,
yeah. Going back to what you're asking, what questions you should ask, I think one of the questions that I find that never or very rarely gets asked is the future-proofing one. Because you design a workplace for day one, because it's a project. You want a definite delivery date, don't you, to get everything coordinated. whether it's from the main contractor to the furniture and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the logistics of moving the staff in, IT and all that kind of stuff. Then everybody sort of done it, and that's it. And it stays the same for the next 5-10 years. And the organisation changes, it might grow, it might retract. And I think that's what a lot of the issues with
and often there can be
spaces
2 or 3 years between doing that design and it actually happening in the, through the build.
We talked about my history with DGW earlier, and you know, we were talking about shorter leases, more flexibility for the office market 30 years ago, you know, and one of the things is that people are still getting asked to assign a minimum 10-year lease on office buildings. It's ridiculous. And for certainly in this landscape, that in terms of world events, last thing people want to be doing is committing to that kind of stuff. So future-proofing your workplace is really important. It never gets asked, even from technology point of view. We know how fast technology changes. When again, 20 odd years ago, we were talking Bluetooth and wireless access protocol.
Yes.
You know, it's now we're on to the next level. It's probably wireless power, which we're just about seeing, you know, integrated into workplaces.
I think what is interesting, that work that you were doing, you know, it goes back to the early 80s, I think, doesn't it? Or actually, it goes back to the 60s. Stuff,
yes.
It's the early 60s, as does Robert Frost. Yeah. The actual discussion points and the questions that were being asked then, definitely no different than what they should be today. The only difference is the technology and a few other things are very different.
And the answers are different. I think that's, some people are still working on the same answers that they got years ago. I think there is a challenge with future-proofing, and it's usually budget. And what I mean by that, so a couple of weeks ago, I was at an award-winning office in London for GSK. Wonderful, great job. Steve Wright, head of Cornet at the moment, done a fantastic job. Well, look, they've been in there a year, but they're already changing some of it. And how they're doing that is they put a budget aside at the beginning, because they said, in spite of all the work you do, there is still unpredictability, and some of the spaces weren't working. So they're using some of that contingency budget, which was put in, to make it work even better. And that's the challenge, is that if people want to manage change, they've got to have budget to implement that change.
That's really good.
It is an interesting building, actually, because that was set out, didn't it, to be the world's healthiest building?
Is, and
it achieved that.
GSK. And I also want to give a shout out for Newcastle, if I may.
Please do.
One of your leading companies based in Newcastle is a company called Sage, who I'm sure you've all heard of. Their head of workplace experience is a guy called Neil Usher, who I mentioned earlier. And just look at some of the work that they're doing. It's quite incredible. I will plug that he is doing a webinar for us to tell us how great the workplaces are, what's a high-performing workplace. But this is Sage is global now. It's not, but still headquartered in Newcastle. And that is an example of the leadership giving Neil empowerment to be able to create great places to work. There's a lot to learn from companies like that.
And why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you empower someone to make sure the workforce are empowered, as you said? I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But,
it's a scalable thing. It doesn't have to be organisations that are, you know, in tens of thousands. Even a small organisation can look after their workplace and bear it all in mind. You know, ask the right questions, and what people need as opposed to what people want, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I work with very small companies. I've worked with charities. Sometimes they just need that help. Someone to hold their hand to ask the right questions and move them on to the next. I'm not designing the workplace. I'm just helping them navigate the world of it and pointing them in the right direction of people like yourself, you know, that kind of thing. But everybody, they can't ignore it now. They shouldn't ignore the workplace.
I think you're right, actually. There's something that's just sprung to mind there, because obviously we're talking about, you know, Sage, who, you know, they employ 10, 12,000 people now globally or whatever. looking at the data that we're getting, and this is a question probably for Jacqui as well. One thing where we're seeing, cause we've looked at the different sizes of companies as well, and how the data differs, and the interesting one for us is where we're seeing the companies that have the biggest change in how they work is when they go from literally as a startup in the micro business, when they suddenly become a small business and then a medium. Once you get up to the larger organizations, it becomes relatively known, and they have the resources to employ the people and do the research. But particularly was the micro business to small business, those going from 6 or 7 employees up to 20 odd, and bringing in, having, I suppose, the time to step back and have a look at that. What does my workspace need to be? And that's when it changes more than ever. And it's gone from that startup into something which is now going to be an organization, has a culture. How do you do that? And they've probably gone from working from home or a shared facility that was inexpensive to their first proper office space. And it's being able to reach and give them that, your knowledge, our knowledge. They may not necessarily have the budget for the best furniture in the world, but they can still do the right settings and do the right things to give them just a little bit of an edge.
So really, I guess really the takeaway is ask people what they want. Yeah. It's not that...
What they need.
What they need.
Sorry, what they need. Yes, sorry. Ask people what they need, and they may never have been asked that before. And then... Or
what helps them do their best work,
Yeah.
I think that's the one. If you ask somebody what they need, they're having to find it. If you ask them what a great day is and what comes out of that, or what frustrates it and gets in the way, that's gold dust, I guess, to the likes of Jacqui as well. And that doesn't take a huge budget. It doesn't take anything particularly complicated. Obviously, it would be better if you guys were involved in that and help with that, but just having those conversations can make... It is something I'm trying to work on, actually, to see whether we can deliver that free.
Yeah, my challenge when I moved up from London to Newcastle back in the early noughties, people didn't know what workplace consultancy was. It was quite...
Was that one of them London terms that doesn't really...
Architects did it. You want to go get your office design, you go to see an architect. It's all a building project as opposed to a transformation
ongoing
project.
Yeah.
So it's knowledge, as you're saying, knowledge is a really getting people out to know that there's people out there. That was part of the reason why I've gone off track again. When I came up here, nobody knew what workplace consultancy was. It was just about office design, designing an office. It wasn't about transformation. And I decided that when I left my job at a local architect, so that I would try and build in that process in a traditional design format. So I was, without actually being explicit about saying, right, you're going to get a workplace consultant as part of this design project, I was giving them me, essentially, and I was the one that was giving them that added value. I wasn't just designing the workplace. I wasn't waiting for them to tell me what they wanted. So there are companies that have, like local architects who've invested in workplace consultancy as a specific service. But it's very much a London-centric thing. It still hasn't evolved or moved up north.
Yeah, there probably are only 4 really true good consultants in the north.
They rely on
northeast.
People like Workpattern and the handful of people who know about the workplace to be able to have delivered some of the most exciting workplaces around Newcastle. We have the time. There's the people here. You don't have to go to Manchester-based architects or
Please
London.
don't.
You don't have to. And I know of big local companies, big local companies who've done that. And
just assuming that they need to get the right answers.
They've paid extortionate fees.
Because I guess like most things, they don't. If you want a great result, you have to make it happen. It doesn't just happen by chance. And you've given some great examples of what any organisation can do to empower their workforce, and who wouldn't want to do that. So thank you. That's been fascinating. And I'm sure the viewers will be taking things away and jotting things down about, we must make sure this happens. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to head back to my workplace now because it has been beautifully designed. If your workplace isn't what you want it to be, then hopefully you've learned something today that will enable you, encourage you to make it what you want. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Northern Spotlights. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and that will make sure you get informed of when the next episode goes live. And I'll see you again.